In June 2022, Japanese manufacturing giant Kawasaki Heavy Industry was exposed for falsifying number of quality inspection data. The 7000 series tree that caused a major shutdown of Washington subway last year was one of their falsifications. In February 2021, Japanese pharmaceutical company Kobayashi Kako was exposed as having a record of falsifying nearly 80% of some 500 drugs. One of the oral medications for tinea pedis contained hypnotic ingredients that exceeded the prescribed dose by a factor of 2.5. In February 2022, 97% of clams produced in Kumamoto were found to be from China and Korea by DNA testing. The local fishermen spread imported clams on mud flats of Kumamoto and picked them up, and the clams acquired a new nationality. In addition, Japan sent Mitsubishi Group counterfeit, Takata airbag gate, Akebono brake counterfeit, Subaru quality inspection counterfeit, covering almost all walks of life. Their counterfeiting lasts for 10 years to half a century. I looked up a lot of videos and found that most of them were jokes and banter about Bowman sprayed and the counterfeiting scandals. The Japanese bow and apologized for all their mistakes, saying "sumimasen," but they never cracked them. But what makes me more curious is what motivates them to fake. Is it craftsmanship, or Japan's bubble economy, or both exports? To find the answer, I checked the historical and economic background of Japan in that period, and I found that it can be explained from one aspect alone. As it stands now, Japanese counterfeiting involves many complex factors, including Japan's fiscal policy and monetary policy, corporate business model, culture, and Japanese mentality. This time, we'll dig into the reasons for Made in Japan flop. To make it clear, we need to start with the history of the rise and fall of Japanese manufacturing and macro level to see what kind of economic situation made Japanese move to fake. In fact, from Meiji reform to early 1970s, Japan was famous for knockoff, and their main targets were the United States and Germany. They not only copied their products but also brought logo and design, such as well-known Toshiba, Nikon, and Fujiya. Godzilla is an exact copy of the base from 20,000 Fathoms. Guo Jiming, the master of Chinese copycats, was shocked by them. Nevertheless, Japan embarked on the road to modernization through imitation, and with the support of the US, it developed from defeated country with financial ruins to the world's second-largest economy. From 1951 to 1970, Japan's GDP grew at an average rate of 9.3% annually, and in 1985, Japan placed the United States as the world's largest creditor country. From then on, Japanese confidence swelled into hubris and arrogance. These achievements put a lot of pressure on the United States. The three-decade-long trade war didn't stop Japan's rise, but made the US the world's largest debtor nation. The United States was facing a sharp increase in the fiscal deficit at that time. To solve these problems, the United States signed the Peace Accord with Japan, Germany, the UK, and France on September 22, 1985. After that, the yen continued to appreciate till the exchange rate of yen against dollar rose from 1 to 250 to 1 to 83 in mid-1990s. The appreciation of yen means that people have larger room to spend money in their hands. Japanese companies started to expand overseas. Sony Corporation bought Columbia Pictures in Hollywood, and the Mitsubishi bought a 51% stake at Rockefeller Center in New York for $846 million. In addition, Japanese companies accelerated innovation with technology and the reform of management mode. Since then, Made in Japan has been on world stage. Unfortunately, such a boom didn't last long. In the next few years, a series of wrong decisions buried Japan's economic boom. Japan stepped into first and last decade, second, and the third. And Japan's manufacturing industry was also affected. Japan's economy is export-oriented. The manufacturing industry imports raw materials, processes them into high-quality products, and then exports them to earn profits. The rapid appreciation of yen led to a 22% decline in exports in yen terms in just 2 years. Facing such poor economic data, the Japanese government decided to implement expansionary fiscal policy and expansionary monetary policy. They hope to guide people to invest in real economy such as research, innovation, infrastructure by increasing money supply. However, it's difficult to control flow of money. The Japanese government misjudged human nature. In face of rising housing prices and stocks, who will invest money they borrowed at low interest rates in research and production, where returns are slow and uncertain? Japanese companies and even states invested money into financial and real estate-related fields. Instead of realizing that something was wrong, the Japanese government recognized the false prosperity caused by bubble economy and further expanded fiscal and monetary policies to inflate the bubbles. However, the capital market without real value support is very fragile. It was too late by the time Japanese government realized the problem and turned to monetary tightening policy. The economic bubble burst and the Japanese economy fell into prolonged depression. At the beginning of the bubble burst, the banks raised interest rates on loans and people sold their properties to pay back the money. Property prices plummeted and the market fell into panic. But now only had to bear immense losses, but also had to use their daily income to repay their debts. Most companies used wealth they had accumulated over years to cover losses and pay off debts, losing ability to advance R&D and production, which severely hindered upgrading manufacturing. Under such economic background, the stagnant Japanese manufacturing industry began to think about plagiarism. In addition to harsh economic environment, complacency in technology is also a main reason for the decline of Japanese manufacturing. I mentioned the early successes have made the Japanese overconfident. Before a bubble burst, the huge wealth made them mistakenly believe that Japan has become the world's number one. In 1989, Akio Morita and Ishihara Shintaro, the founders of Sony, jointly published the Japan Nakasi No in an attempt to challenge American hegemony. Thus, the Japanese took it for granted that they were the only benchmark in the manufacturing world and they only need to work on their existing products. This is where the Japanese craftsmanship comes from, and the myopia, self-satisfaction, and arrogance it reflects is very different from craftsmanship widely approved, which is devoted to innovation and excellence. In Japanese, innovation is called kakushi, which means technical innovation, whereas business innovation should be the combination of new technologies and products that allows products to capture profits in market as soon as possible. Misunderstanding and pride led Japanese manufacturing development astray. A fine example of this is battleship Yamato. Another example is memory chip. In 1980s, manufacturers had extremely high requirements for quality of chips, a quality guarantee of at least 25 years. Japan was the only country that met the strict requirements. They finally produced a chip to meet the requirements, and the yield rate was over 90%, while that of the United States was only 70%. However, turning to the 1990s, the world entered the internet era. Chips were mainly applied to PCs and cell phones, market needing no more chips with a 25-year warranty, but economical and ordinary quality ones that could last 3 to 5 years. But the Japanese companies didn't care about the change of production process to meet the market demand. Eventually, the high manufacturing cost and long production cycle led to insufficient profit, which in turn affected investment in R&D. The long-term vicious circle made the Japanese manufacturing industry disconnected from market and eventually lost competitiveness. From 2008, Japanese home appliance companies began to lose money across the board. Craftsmanship lost the art of keeping up with the times. I briefly introduced the history, rise and fall of Japanese manufacturing industry. The economic downtrend lagging innovation stripped its glory and brought up a prolonged winter. Faced with threat of bankruptcy, Japanese companies began to change their management mode and made adjustments at the strategic level to help Made in Japan survive. Although this relieved their economic pressure, it also disintegrated the quality management system, which directly led to proliferation of counterfeiting in Japan. The first, the weakening of quality operation. The company achieves economic efficiency by improving quality of its products, work, and operations to ensure sustainable and stable development. All technicians, frontline workers, sales, and service have to participate in the battle. Quality can only be guaranteed if each step of process is done properly. Japan used to be a very good success story. Its rapid recovery after the war was due to U.S. support and quality operation. The quality operation is not perfect. It has a slow effect. Quality operations requires company to invest a lot of time, manpower, and financial resources in early stage, but only if the customers get benefits can company gain profits. Therefore, a time-lapse implementation and sales growth is inevitable. Quality operation is better for companies that intend to grow steadily in long term. It's not a good choice for companies to pursue short-term profits. Back in Japan, a large number of companies at that time turned to Western business mode and emphasized short-term profits in order to avoid bankruptcy. Business managers tried every possible way to reduce costs. With a mild quick success, Japanese companies abandoned their dignity and morality, put on their social responsibility and law, and launched their counterfeiting business with a sense of fluke. Here I put a share from Zhihu for your reference. A supplier of a large Japanese company switched low performance materials with the authorization in order to ensure order quality and keep costs down. But the material gap was hard to detect, and the Japanese chief engineer signed the report to adjust dimensional tolerances directly, ignoring safety hazards. This is not an individual case, but a microcosm of many Japanese companies. So it's clear that working quality operations is one of the direct causes of counterfeiting. The kind of business model transformation is much more than that. The change of employment system in Japan has also led to falsification of Japan companies to some extent. In the early 20th century, Japan gradually developed a lifelong employment system in order to achieve economic growth. As the name implies, once hired employees and companies were tied to each other and had a shared future. There's a low job transfer rate. Employers invest a lot in employees' training, including quality operation. In the 1990s, after the burst of the Japanese bubble economy, companies massively reduced employment. And in 1993, Japan entered the employment ice age. The chart shows during the bubble economy, job opening to application ratio in Japan reached a peak of 1.4, means that each job seeker had 1.4 available jobs. But in 1993, the ratio jumped to 0.76, and in 1999, it was only 0.47, which means that 1 out of 2 people must be unemployed. During that time, companies placed a greater emphasis on non-regular employees to reduce costs. Although that saved money, the temporary workers had few senses of belonging, responsibility, and quality control to a company. The core of quality operation is responsibility consisting of spontaneity, voluntariness, and self-discipline. The rise in the proportion of non-regular employees dismantled the system. Therefore, the disintegration of quality system of Japan companies is inevitable, both in terms of business model and employment system. Overall, it seems the counterfeiting of Japanese companies is the result of a combination of factors. Yet there's another question. Corporate counterfeiting is not only found in Japan, but also in other countries such as the Volkswagen emission scandal. But only in Japan did a strong public opinion erupt, and the counterfeiting lasted for a long time, involved a wide range of people, and had a high degree of social participation and frequency. How did that environment develop? We need to talk about the Japanese collectivism. The Japanese are known to have a strong sense of collectivism, and they emphasize loyalty to a collective. Literally, there's nothing wrong with a cohesive collective. But Japanese collectivism involves extreme exclusion or even heresy. This makes Japanese people afraid of being excluded and isolated from the group. Being isolated is something that can be alleviated with time for ordinary people, but for Japanese, it's something worse than death. The era of isolation has brought the rise of conformism in Japan. Yanagito Kunio, a Japanese folklorist, described it as a deep-rooted Japanese concept that people quietly watch the trends of society and go in the direction everyone goes. And in fact, Japanese people are more like fish and migratory birds that follow the herd. Most Japanese people use a poker face to hide themselves carefully and play their good role honestly. To put it bluntly, they just follow the regiment with little thought, and even if they find a problem, they never the first to speak up. That's why no one has come forward to report collective fraud. Besides conformity influenced by Japanese shame culture, collectivism has nurtured the blurred sense of right and wrong and the perverse evaluation standard in Japan. Japanese are more concerned with collectivism and shame culture than with right and wrong. Their politeness, humility, and apologies are all shows of yielding to collectivism and reflect know their true thoughts. So when hands of Japanese companies bowed in front of the media with full dress and apologized, they didn't recognize their mistakes in their minds, and they were not prepared to correct them. In their view, apology is just a form of public opinions, and rectification is unnecessary. This explains why a company is frequently exposed for counterfeiting. To sum up, in 1990s, Japan's mistakes in fiscal and monetary policy and the signing of a plans accord led to burst the bubble economy. Japanese companies missed an opportunity to innovate and inform, losing their market advantages and lagging behind China and South Korea due to economic crises and the distorted craftsmanship. Under pressure, Japan adjusted its business model for short-term profit, and companies began to fake for profit. And the change of employment system completely disintegrated quality control system. The extreme collectivism failed the monitoring mechanism. Japanese companies have been plagued by scandals in recent years. Do you remember the Japan that has said no? 30 years later, Japan ate the no. Not only did they fail to shake the hegemony of the US, but they also broke the myth of craftsmanship and struggled to slide out counterfeiting. Finally, I think it's wrong and hateful for the Japanese to make fake products. But I didn't make this video to mock Japanese people, Japanese companies, or Japan as a whole. We're just trying to find out more about what's going on behind, so that we can put aside our emotions and understand the essence of it objectively.
Thank you for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button if you enjoy it.